Welcome to the Purposeful MD podcast. As a physician, you've sacrificed so much of your life for other people, your patients, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. What would it feel like to spend time doing what you enjoy and to live without guilt? I'm your host, Dr. Laura Sutton, a family physician, certified coach, and business owner. If you're a medical professional on a journey towards your most purposeful life, a life with more time and energy, and ultimately more joy, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to another episode of the Purposeful MD podcast. And today I'm going to be talking about setting and maintaining boundaries. And it's such an important topic to me and such an important topic with clients that I coach. And so I'll spend some time on it today. We'll get into a few other topics that we won't have time to get into. But let's dive in. I want to start with a story that really demonstrated this for me. So about 10 years ago, our family's rescue dog began to decline in his health. He was getting older. He was about 13 at the time. And so we knew the end was coming soon. If you've ever been through this, you know how difficult it is to make the decision to say goodbye. And at the time, I was a single parent with my then 8-year-old daughter. And I felt like I was making the decision by myself since I was the main adult really in his life. And except for my daughter, but she was pretty young at the time, I was the only one who saw him on a day-to-day basis and really witnessed his decline. Luckily, the vet was incredibly supportive and she was amazing. She fully supported my decision to let him go. So it was a Wednesday and we scheduled the appointment for that Friday. I will never forget standing there at the desk of my then executive assistant, taking the call from the vet, and she knew what had been going on. I was pretty close with her. I shared a lot with her, and she knew what was going on with my dog. And so as soon as I hung up the phone with the vet and made the appointment, I was just numb. I couldn't think straight. I knew I wouldn't be able to function at work. And I told my executive assistant at the time, I need to go home and I'll be back at work on Monday. And she was amazing as well. She said, I'll make it happen. Go home, take care of yourself. And so I was able to spend the next few days snuggling with him, giving him lots of love. Not that I hadn't given him lots of love, but just giving him all his favorite treats and food and just spending those last few days with him and cherishing my last bit of time with him. And it was one of the greatest gifts that I ever gave myself. At the time, I wasn't used to asking for what I needed. I wasn't really even used to allowing myself to have needs, let alone to express them. And as difficult as it was in that moment to assert my need for my own emotional health and the health of my dog, was really necessary. I knew I would have regretted not spending that time with him if I didn't spend those few days with him. So another one of my clients, I want to share now a story from one of my physician clients. So she shared with me during a coaching session that she really wanted to start going to a weekly Pilates class. The class was on Saturday mornings and her family was supportive of her going. Her challenge was that Saturday mornings is when she usually spent catching up on charts. So if she went to the class, she thought she would have to move her charting to a different time during the weekend, which was time that she and typically spent with her family. So she said to me, I know I'm supposed to be setting a boundary, but I really can't. So I was asking her, what are the feelings that come up as she thinks about setting the boundary? And she described something to me that was really interesting. She said she thought she was going to be perceived as selfish by her family, that she would be letting them down because she wasn't contributing. And she shared with me that her perception of setting a boundary was almost like saying to somebody, I can't do that. That's not my job. And she had seen this behavior modeled in her clinic staff of the staff saying, well, that's not my job and I won't do that. And she thought that's what it meant to set a boundary. So we talked a little bit about what it means to set a boundary. There's a definition that I love from psychologist Dr. Becky Kennedy. And she defines a boundary in this way. A boundary is something you tell someone you will do, and it requires the other person to do nothing. So I'm going to say that again. A boundary is something that you tell someone you will do, and it requires the other person to do nothing. And I love this definition. It's incredibly empowering because it means that we don't have to ask the other person to do anything. That's making a request, is when we ask somebody to do something. So in my example, I told my team that I was going to take a couple days off work. I didn't ask them to do anything. I just told them this is what I'm going to do, and it required them to do nothing. It also means that we're in control. It allows us to take complete control of the situation. We don't have to depend on somebody else's behavior to set the boundary. We don't have to wait for someone else to ask. We don't have to wait for someone else to act. We have total control over the boundary, since our behavior is the only behavior that is necessary for that boundary to be set. And what that does is that helps to release some of the guilt that comes with setting boundaries. So if you are a physician or APC or other medical professional, you probably have some guilt that comes up when you think about asking somebody to do something. When we were in training as a physician, I know, at least when I was in training, we were asked to do a lot of things that weren't really within our job description, but we were expected to do. So things like transporting patients or going to fetch x-rays from the radiology department in the basement. This was the days before digital films. Or things that just might not have been a necessary part of our training, but we were asked to do them. And we were evaluated based on our willingness to do these tasks, even though they weren't needed, they weren't necessary for our training. And so we were literally rewarded for being a team player in school and performing these tasks. It was unheard of, unthinkable to say no to a resident or an attending who asked us to do those things. And so our brains are wired towards saying yes to doing things that just may not be necessary for us. So that really gets into a lot of people pleasing tendency. And I'm definitely going to spend another episode on people pleasing because it is such a powerful behavior that really can get in the way of us moving forward. Just know that we've really been programmed from our early childhood to people please and to please the people around us. We were rewarded for it. Maybe when we were in grade school, we were given good grades. Maybe we were rewarded for it by our parents or teachers or mentors. And so we still live with this notion that it's wired within us to please other people and to do things for other people, even if they might not necessarily align with what our needs are. So if you're at this point and you're thinking, yeah, that sounds great. Setting boundaries sounds great, but what about the impact on everybody else? If I set a boundary, it's going to have an impact. And this is likely true. It might have an impact on people around you. And a lot of times it's people that are important to us, our family, our spouse or partner, our children, our colleagues, our patients. And it's going to bring up a lot of emotions. And we talked about managing through those emotions in episode 5. So I'd encourage you to go back to that episode. If you're really thinking about all these emotions that are coming up as you set boundaries, go back and listen to that episode so you can manage through those emotions. And I want to share a quote with you that's been really impactful for me as I think about setting boundaries and as I practice, because this is a practice for me every single day. It's author and researcher Danielle Kepke. She says, "What if they get mad at me? If people get mad at you for having boundaries, it means they've benefited from you not having any. You don't need to keep people happy every minute of the day. You are not responsible for other people's feelings. If someone has a reaction to your boundary, you didn't make them react. You chose to voice your feelings and needs. They chose their reaction. You cannot control what the other people do." So that's the quote on how to respond when other people get mad at us for having boundaries. It's so incredibly powerful that we have It's so incredibly powerful that another person may have benefited from us not having any boundaries, and their reaction is a reflection of them, and it's not us. And we cannot control what the person does. We can't change how somebody else is going to respond. The beautiful thing about setting boundaries and the impact on people around us is that when we start to set boundaries, we are giving permission. We are setting an example. We are giving permission for other people to set boundaries. And this is great behavior to model for our children or our patients. When we can set those boundaries for ourselves, we are setting the example and giving people permission to set boundaries in their own lives. Not that they need permission from us, but they see us model the behavior and they see that it's okay to set boundaries, and it just becomes more accepted. And it's still not really accepted at this point. So as you're practicing setting a boundary, and we're going to get into some practice here, I'm going to leave you guys with an exercise. Another really important concept that I will spend another episode on is self-compassion. It's really, really important to have compassion for yourself throughout this process because it is not easy. It's not easy, and that's why we're talking about it, because it takes a lot of practice. We have these beliefs inside of us about how we have to show up around other people, or how we have to be such a team player and we can't say no, and all these other beliefs about how we have to serve other people in ways that may or may not align with us. And those beliefs kept us safe for a really long time. Those beliefs were really necessary and important, and they might have been literal acts of survival for us at one point in our lives. So we needed those beliefs, but we don't need those beliefs any longer. And so we can release them, we can let them go. We maybe even want to thank them for keeping us safe or protecting us at one point in our life, but we don't need those beliefs anymore. So as we release those beliefs and work through those emotions that come up as we start practicing and setting these boundaries and maintaining these boundaries, we really have to have a lot of compassion for ourselves. So I'm going to do another episode on self-compassion. It's been one of the most important aspects of my personal and professional career, and it is definitely worthy of an episode in and of itself. It's really important that we set and maintain boundaries in order to manage our time, managing our energy, because if we allow anybody and everybody to have access to us and to tell us how we should spend our time and our energy, then we're not going to have any for ourselves. And this takes a ton of practice. Again, it's something I work at almost every single day. But just like anything else, the more you practice, we're building up those muscles. We're literally rewiring our brain, the easier it gets. So let's get into practice. I want you guys to come away with something. So grab a paper. So grab a pen, a piece of paper. If you're driving, then come back to this because it's really, really important. Answer these questions for yourself. What's one boundary that you can set this week? It's okay, and it's actually a good idea at first to start with something small. So what's a small boundary that you can set for yourself this week? Start small, and that's how you build confidence, is you start small and you take action. So what's a small boundary that you can set this week? And as you think about setting this boundary, what are the thoughts that come up? Write every single thought down here, all the thoughts that come up as you think about setting the boundary. For each thought, ask yourself, is the thought true? If it's not true, what is the truth that's related to that thought? And then the last question is, what permission do you need to give yourself to set this boundary? And I give you whatever permission that you need to set this boundary. I really encourage you to practice this. Send me an email. Let me know how this goes for you. Because like I said, I'm on this journey right there with you. I'm practicing every single day. My email is Laura, Laura, at thepurposefulmd.com. Send me an email. I'd love to hear from you about how this practice is going for you. And just know that you've got this. This is hard work, and I'm here with you every step of the way. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching The Purposeful MD on YouTube. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe. Please also visit www.thepurposefulmd.com for free downloads or to discuss working with me as your coach.